So welcome everybody. We have with us Kathy Eisenhauer. She is an Associate Vice President and part of that whole production part of the industry. So I'm going to turn it over to her.
All right. Hi. Sorry you can't see my face, but welcome everybody. It's great to be here and excited to give you an update and talk to you a little bit about production and sourcing. So what I did is I put together like a very brief PowerPoint presentation to kind of walk you through exactly what production and sourcing is. So first off, what I'll do is I'll start off and give you a little bit about my background. Then I will review the production role and how we engage cross-functionally across our business. And then I'm going to discuss the product life cycle, and I think that will help you understand a bit more about what production and sourcing actually is and what we do. So first off, I am a graduate of Bowling Green State University. I have a degree in communications. So no, I was not I did not have a fashion degree. I don't even think I took any fashion classes. So kind of fell into retail in a very interesting way. So when I was graduating, I went to work in the department store field in merchandising, and really how I got into that is I had 2 job offers out of college, one from a bank and one from a department store. And the department store was going to pay me $500 more a year, so I thought that was the best course of action. So I took an extra $500 a year, making $18,500, and that's how I got started in retail. So I have worked for multiple retail organizations over the years. I have actually worked in merchandise planning, where you are projecting out the financials of the business. I've also done inventory management, and then finally went into production after, like I said, many stints in merchandising planning, and then found my way into production towards the latter half of my career. I have been with L Brands for 15 years, and I've worked for both VS and Pink. And I know one of the things that when I was looking at the information, it was about special skills and things. I have no special skills. You know, I didn't, like I said, didn't have any great background in fashion. I wish I had more, you know, a little more knowledge and education in that aspect. I think for me and what a lot of things I look for when I'm looking to hire someone is not necessarily always the degree, but really the person. I was then, and I still am, a very hard worker, and I was always willing to learn, to take on more responsibilities. So even with a different degree, I think, you know, pretty much anyone can be successful in any field, especially in the fashion industry. So it's really more about what you bring to the table and your desire to learn. So what is production and sourcing? So basically, production and sourcing is taking a product that is designed and selected by your company, and you're bringing it to life. So we manage the product life cycle. And some of our key responsibilities would be to develop product lead times. So that would be your buy dates, production lead times, like how long it takes to actually physically make the product, how long it would take for materials like to knit your fabrics, dye your fabrics. And then we work on agility and speed to market. So what I mean by that is, you know, in fashion, obviously it's very important to know what the trends are, and you want to be able to buy things as close to the trend as possible. So it would be really hard to know what the trend was going to be 2 years from now. So you don't want to be buying things now for, you know, 2022. You want to be buying things now as close as you can to when you're going to sell that. So that's when we talk about working on agility and speed to market, is understanding how long it takes to make a product, how we can make products faster, and how we can make decisions as late as possible. The other thing we work on is we commit and manage raw materials. So those would be the fabrics and the trims that make up your product. We supply style level projections to the vendors for capacity planning. So every vendor needs to be able to plan their production. So they need to know exactly how much they need to make, what they need to make, and how long it's going to take them to make it. So projections by style help them to do that capacity planning, because every product has what we call like an SMV, which is a standard minute value, which is how long does it actually take to physically sew the product. So it's really important that vendors understand your style projections so that they can best plan how they're going to manage their days and their weeks. We also ensure product readiness. So we're working very closely with our cross-functional teams, technical design, raw materials, product development. Is the product fit approved? Are the colors approved prior to ordering? So we need to make sure that everything is ready to go before we actually place an order. And then order management. So we place and manage the delivery of all the orders. So once the product is ready, we will get an order from our planning partners, and we will pass that on to the vendors. And then we will manage that order up until the time it delivers in our distribution center. And then we also own the, whoops, oh, let me go back. I messed up here. We also own the relationship with our vendors. So if there is a problem, we are the ones that need to solve it. So if they come to us and say something didn't deliver on time from a raw material and now they're late in terms of when they were supposed to sew something, we work with them to try and solve those issues so that we can keep everything on time. And it's really important for us to deliver product on time because we plan products for certain time frames. So we may want a product to come in to sell for, let's say, Thanksgiving week. And if the product doesn't make it on time, what will happen is we will lose sales as a company. So it's really up to our teams to make sure that everything that we are buying delivers on time so that we do not lose any sales volume. So the next thing I kind of wanted to talk about is products. And all of our products have like unique raw materials and lead times. So each product is a little bit different. And so in production and sourcing, you need to understand what the differences are and how then that applies to lead times. So for instance, this first outfit, it is a synthetic bra and bike short, and it is a print. So print lead times are longer than it would be if it was just a normal solid. So if this is a solid black bra and bike short in the same fabric, the lead time would actually be a little bit shorter, because from a print perspective, it does take longer to actually do the work in making the print. So that is something that you obviously would need to know when you are planning the lead times of your product. The second outfit, which is a seamless bra and legging, and it is a dip dye. And so if we think about dip dye, means you see how there's this gradient color. So what they do is they have to take this product and they dip it into a dye bath, hanging it, and then continually going down and down and down and down, so that the darker, the pieces that are down in the dye bath the longest get to be this darker color. This lead time is actually a lot longer than the print lead time, because this is something that when you're doing it, it's all very manual. It's very labor intensive with, people actually having to physically take the product, put it on a hanger, dip it into the machine, and continually have it dipped until it's ready to go. So there is a lot of labor in here. So this product takes a lot longer than this product to make. Then over here you have like a tie-dye sweatshirt. So this material is a cotton material. It's an actual tie-dye. So when you think about, I don't know how many of you have ever done your own tie-dyeing, right? Where you're taking the rubber bands and you're twisting your t-shirt or your sweatshirt, and then you're putting it in a bunch of dye. Well, that's exactly how they have to do this. So again, very manual. We're still at the point where you're tie-dyeing, you are taking rubber bands and you're putting it in different places to create this effect. So the more labor and the more manual labor, the more people that have to touch it, the longer the lead time. Then on the bottom, you have this cotton spandex logo boy short. So panties would be one of our shortest lead time products. And the reason that this is a shorter lead time, one is it's a solid, and then two, how much you have to sew and how much labor goes into this is very small. So panties, probably from a sewing operation standpoint, this probably has 4 to 5 operations. I'm always like doing this. Versus when you're getting into other more complex products, the number of times that it has to go through the sewing lines and the actual sewing operations are much greater. So a panty like this, we could probably make this in a couple weeks, where you've got this other product, the seamless product is more like, could be 12 weeks. This is more of like a 9 to 10 weeks, and this would be about the same, around a 9-week lead time from a product standpoint. All right, the next thing that I thought I'd talk about is really cross-functional engagement and thinking about production and sourcing and who do they engage with on a daily basis. And I like to think production and sourcing is somewhat in the hub of the retail industry. So when we think about production and sourcing, who do we engage with on a daily basis? So one of the main groups that we engage with is our planning team. And the planning team is the group that will supply us, again, projections on items, financial plans. So those are really important for us to share with all of our vendors so that they can understand exactly what we need from a capacity planning standpoint. We also engage very heavily with our merchants. So the merchants will be the team that determine the assortment and they determine the products. So we need to understand what products they want and when they want them in order to make sure we're getting it made in the right amount of time. So we are engaging with merchants daily to make sure that we are aligned on exactly what they need. We also spend a lot of time with our product development partners. So our product development team are the ones responsible for costing and actually sending and allocating the product to our vendors. So it's really important that we know exactly where the product is going, who it was allocated to. So if it was allocated to a vendor, let's say in Sri Lanka, then it's really critical that we understand that, because if we know if there's issues in Sri Lanka, if we have, let's say if there was natural disasters, or we have, that vendor may or may not have the capability, we need to work very carefully with our product development partners so that we can understand if there's any issues from where they're allocating the product, then we can adequately potentially look for someplace else to make it if we have a problem. So we spend a lot of time with our product development partners so that we know exactly what's happening and where the product is being sourced. Technical design. So technical design is responsible for the fit of the product. So in order for us to buy a product, we have to make sure that it's fit and ready to go. So we engage often with our technical design partners, because if they are going through and they're fitting a garment, and let's say the garment is not approved yet, we cannot place the order. So they need to keep us up to date if there's issues. We need to stay very close with them to make sure that if there are concerns, if we can work it out and make sure that we can still hit our lead times. We also engage very heavily with the raw material team. So obviously all of our products have raw materials, and we have raw materials that come from all over the world. And it's really important that we try and, if we can, source raw materials in the same country where we're making the product. So if you think about, if you're going to go pick up dinner, most of the time you like to pick up dinner somewhere pretty close to you, right? Because by the time you get it back, you want to make sure that it's still in good shape and it's hot. You don't want to go drive 2 hours to get a pizza and come home. It's not going to be, it's going to take you longer. It's going to cost you more money, right? And it's not necessarily going to be very fast. So same thing with raw materials. Ideally, you like to have your raw materials in the same country where you're producing your product. Now, that's not always feasible, because there's certain raw materials that are really only made in certain countries. So for instance, laces, the majority of lace is made in China. So you can't always make all of your lace product in China. So sometimes we do have to ship raw materials. And if you do, you just have to account for that in your lead time. So it's really important for us to understand lead times of raw materials, where they're being made, how much capacity there is for certain raw materials. So if you need, let's say, 1,000 yards for a product, but your raw material mill, your fabric mill, can only produce 500 yards, what are you going to do? Where are you going to get the balance? So those are things that production and sourcing have to really think about and understand to make sure that we can get the product and deliver it on time. We also work very closely with the logistics team. So obviously, if we're responsible for making sure and placing orders and making sure they deliver to our distribution center on time, it's really important for us to be close to logistics. We need to understand if there's any issues with ocean or air freight, any congestion, if things are running late. Maybe there's new modes of shipping that we haven't learned about that maybe could help us from a speed or agility standpoint. Right now, just with the way the COVID-19 has been, and it has changed a lot of our how we route our product. A lot of our product was originally aired, and we would air it on passenger airplanes in like the belly of the plane. But since people aren't traveling, there aren't as many planes, and especially passenger planes. So it has been an interesting exercise for our logistics team to find capacity on airplanes. And it's interesting because a lot of commercial airlines have actually taken passenger seats out of their airplanes to put cargo in there to try and make up some of the loss that they've had from passenger transportation. So it's funny, we've actually seen pictures of our boxes of our product being strapped into seats, just like passengers, with seat belts, just trying to, get our product here in the right amount of time. We also work very closely with our quality team. So while we're in production, if there's an issue with quality, so an issue with sewing, If something was made incorrectly, they used the wrong color. We work very closely with the quality team so that we can resolve the issue, understand who is the accountable party, and then how do we want to problem solve and move forward with the issue. So they are someone that we deal with. Unfortunately, many times it's just when things go wrong, but it's someone that we need to be very close to. And then the last group that we engage with would be the design group. And while they're not our key partners, it's really important that we understand the vision of design and what they're trying to get to, so that when we are, working through the timelines of the product, if they need something very quickly, it helps us to be able to problem solve and look for solutions to bring their, their thoughts into reality. So then the last thing I kind of wanted to talk about a little bit was the life cycle of a product. So what I did is I took this little sweatshirt here, and we'll kind of talk through the life cycle of the product. So the first piece of it is really about product design. And this is where they identify the raw materials and color choices of the product that they want, and then determine what vendor it will go to. And then they pass off a tech pack, which is basically all of the specifications for this product. It would tell you what the specs would be from a sizing perspective, the colors that they're looking for, and all of the fabric. The next piece is, once the product has been passed off to the vendor, we start working on the fit, the color approvals, the costing, and positioning the raw materials. So the fit and the color and the costing approval all occur in parallel. So technical design can be working on fit, while the raw materials team can be working on color approval, and the product development team is working on costing. And then the raw materials positioned is based on the product lead time. So there could be some raw materials that take longer than others. So depending upon that lead time, the production and sourcing team will position the raw materials so that by the time we're ready to order, we're able to move forward with dyeing. So then once everything is ready to go, production will confirm the product readiness so that it's fit approved, colors are approved, we have our costing, we have the raw materials, they're sitting and waiting to go, they're waiting to be dyed. Once we confirm that and for our order date, then we will place the PO. So let's say we get to the order date and our order date is today and some of this is not ready. We cannot pass that PO. To pass a PO when you're not ready to go means that something won't be able to happen. So if I pass a PO and all my colors aren't approved, that means the mill can't start dyeing. And if they can't start dyeing, that means that they won't deliver the fabric on time. And if they don't deliver the fabric on time, that means the factory can't start producing it on time. So generally what we would have to do is, if there's an issue, we have to rework the timing and understand, what does that mean? Does that mean it'll be a delay? Can we make up the timing someplace else? So that would be the work that production and sourcing would have to do to understand what would now be the timing of the product. And then the last piece of it is order tracking and delivery. So once we place the order, production will track the order status and the timing. They will, if there's any issues that arise in production, like the raw materials are late, like I talked about, if we have lower sewing efficiencies, a natural disaster, production and sourcing is on point to solve these issues. Now, we may not be the ones that have all the answers, but we will be ones to facilitate conversations to try and get things back on track. So for instance, if I have an order that's tracking late due to the mill not being able to deliver the fabric on time, I might engage my raw material partners to try to see if they can find a way to expedite the delivery. If, for instance, the factory is saying, wow, we started sewing this and we thought we could sew this product in 3 minutes, but actually it's taking us 5 minutes to sew it, then we would have discussions with them. Well, can you add more sewing lines? What else can you do? Is there a way to get this back on track? So we spend a lot of time problem solving production issues in order to make sure that we deliver things on time. So that is basically it for what I was going to show you. I don't know if there's anyone there, if there is questions. I wish I could see everybody.
We do have one question in the chat, Kathy. Megan was on with, and so.
Oh, is that Marilyn's daughter?
Yes. And
oh, great.
She says in the chat that you're one of that her mom says that you are one of the hardest, most amazing workers she knows. So thank you for your time. And we know that you have a meeting to get to, but Mel had a question. She says, what's one piece of advice you could offer high school students that's interested in getting into the fashion industry?
Oh boy. Maybe rethink that. No, I'm just kidding. You know, the fashion industry is ever evolving and growing. And so I think if it's something that you are thinking about getting into, I know one thing that I've done for some people is if you know somebody, and sometimes you may not, but if you know of anyone, I think it's always great to try to shadow, spend a day if you can and shadow someone in the industry. I know that, I've done it for many different students, high school students and college students, just so that you can kind of get an idea of what it's like. And there are so many different aspects of the fashion industry. I know most people only think about merchants or design, and there are so many other aspects of the fashion industry that many times you don't learn about in school. And so to try and get a flavor of what the day is like, the day, and your mom, Marilyn, you'll say your day is like, it's crazy, right? It's, people are, nuts, and especially in certain areas, it's a 24/7 job a lot of times. And so understanding, what it's all about, if you can get that opportunity, I think is super, super helpful. So making connections, certainly I am more than willing to do that for anyone that would want to try to shadow for a day. I mean, we're not in the office right now, so it's a little bit hard. But, once we get back, I think that that's really important. And then if you do find connections, just trying to talk to people within the industry, really find out what it's all about. It is a crazy industry. It is not for everyone. I will say that. You really need to have a passion for it. I've been doing it my whole life, and I do have a passion for it, and I wouldn't do anything else. It is, though, it can be challenging, just like any other career. So, kind of try to find out what you're getting yourself into, just like you would if you wanted to become, a doctor, or if you wanted to become a lawyer. Find as much as you can. So that's probably what I would give you from an advice standpoint.
So Kathy, I know you have a meeting at 4, so, and Mel said thank you so much on the chat, or 4:30. So yeah,
they haven't shown up yet. So.
Oh, okay.
I hope you haven't shown up yet.
Well, if they do, just let us know.
Yeah, the person I have my meeting with at 4:30 is always late to every meeting, so I do that. So it's totally fine. I don't know if anyone else has any questions, or if there's anything else you would like me to answer.
Other questions that any of you have? I think one of the things I picked up on is pricing was, I could tell, was directly correlated to the things where you said the lead time, because you can always, it seems like prints always cost more than solids in the store. And I thought that might be why. If the lead time is longer, then that means there's more cost involved usually. So.
Yes, I mean, and it's true, prints do cost more, and sometimes we upcharge for prints and sometimes we don't. But it is true from a timing and labor standpoint. So anything that takes more time generally takes more labor, and labor is money. And so when you think about that, the more people that have to touch it, the more steps, the more process, the higher the cost. So you're right, when you see an upcharge for prints, it is because there's more people touching it, and it takes longer. Even though we wish it wouldn't, because we all like the prints, and why does it have to be more expensive, right?
Right. Well, and the tonal dyes are so popular right now. So the fact
I know.
so
yes.
labor intensive, that was interesting to me too.
Yeah, the tie dyes, anything's like a tie dye, the dip dyes, all of these garment washes, they're all very labor intensive. And so when you think about, oh gosh, why is this more than just a regular sweatshirt? It's truly because of the labor that's involved and the timing that it takes. And it's crazy in this world today when you think about how some of these processes are still very manual, and people having to touch it so heavily. When I seen it in the factories, it's pretty crazy, and you're like, oh wow, now you get it, right? You get why it costs more.
And then another thought I had, it seems to me that maybe your position, and I know you haven't seen all the other people we've heard from, has a lot of touch points on who you're connecting with, more so than even some of our other speakers. So the activity I had them do had to do with planning, and then, you know, that planning and communication piece seems to be critical to your role, which makes sense that your degree's in communication.
Yeah.
So I just, you know, to me, your position is in that, seems really, it's like you're still going back to the technical design people and the fit people that we've heard from. And then, you know, it's just the touch points on that screen that you had. It's just a lot of people to coordinate and, you know, departments to coordinate with. So that was one of the things I found interesting about your position. I don't know if that.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, I mean, I always think of our areas as the hub, and, you know, maybe that other people may not think that, but we do touch a lot of areas, and in a lot of ways we're project managers. You know, we're managing the product timeline, and, you know, we are executing the vision of design and the vision of the company. And so you do have to touch a lot of different people, and, you know, we need information from a lot of people to make sure that the product gets to where it needs to be. And so not only are you communicating with your partners here, you're also communicating with people overseas, communicating with people where English is not their first language. You know, that is something, you know, communicating with vendors and factories, and, you know, making sure that you are very clear in what you're asking, because, you know, while we might take for granted, and, you know, we have a lot of slang in the English language, and that's very hard when it's not your first, you know, English isn't your first language. When we use a lot of slang or other things, you have to be extremely clear and even more, I would say, grammatically correct with what you're trying to say, so that people do understand you. Which, yes, I guess the communication piece did help a little bit with that.
Any of our Forakers have any questions about her job or her role?
I mean, I know sometimes it's hard, when, in the moment. Oh, wait, I think I see one. You talk about being a problem solver when something is not going according to plan. What advice do you have about being a problem solver? I think the biggest advice that I give, especially my team and a lot of people that are, just starting out in their career, is you need to dig in and find the facts. So find the facts first. Ask the questions and dig in and get all the facts. Now, it could be that you don't know what you don't know, right? So sometimes when you're starting out, you don't know what questions to ask. So then I try to make sure, leverage someone who might know the questions. Now, so a lot of times if I have an associate working for me and it feels like maybe there's some questions that they should be asking, I try to send them a little side note, say, hey, you might want to ask these questions because they don't know what they don't know. And so then they're still the ones asking the questions, and then they're learning because they're doing the work, they're asking the questions, and then the next time they know what questions to ask. So I think about being a problem solver is using your resources to understand what questions to ask, because then once you understand the facts, it's a lot easier to try to solve the problem.
I think that's great advice for any problem solving. I love that answer.
I love facts. I'm a fact person.
Any other questions that anybody has?
I mean, certainly if people do have any other questions, Larissa, I can give you my email address, and if people have any questions or if they would like any other advice, I'd be happy to give you my email address. If people, once we get back in the office, if people are curious about spending a time in our office, I'd be happy to do that and arrange that for anybody in the group. So I can give you my contact information, and certainly if people are interested in different facets of retail, I can connect them with anybody within our organization. Anyone in our organization is happy to speak to future retail, people that would be interested in working for the company. So.
And are you out of the Columbus or New York offices?
I'm out of Columbus.
Okay, so that makes it possible, because we've had a couple out of the New York office. That's a little harder to get 4-Hers too, but not completely impossible. We've had some master clothing educator take trips with youth to New York, so.
Yes, so no, I'm out of Columbus. So, and a lot of our employees are out of Columbus. The majority are. So there's definitely always an opportunity for people to come visit.
Actually, I was just going to send Larissa an email asking if there was a way to connect with you guys. Can I send you my email address in the chat? I am a graduating high school senior, so I'd love to come to you.
Yes, that would be great. I would be happy to do that.
Thank you so much. I'll give you my email address.
Perfect.
And Madeline, I can make sure that you get that too. Kathy, I think Marilyn got me your email address so that I could make connections with the Zoom link. So.
Okay, perfect.
All right.
All right. Well, I'm going to say my 4:30 finally decided to call me.
Okay. Well, that means we're done with you. Well, we greatly appreciate your time. One of the things I noted was that to get someone to fill this part took a little effort because no one wanted to commit, which tells me that they have a job in which there's lots of last minute meetings and things that make it hard to commit much ahead. So it wasn't just you, but just we ran into a harder time to get this particular part of the job. So thank you so much for your time. We greatly appreciate it.
It is no problem. I'm happy to do it.
Okay, thanks, Kathy.
Thanks, you guys. Bye.
Bye.